Yo, what's going on guys? Jared here. Today I have another deck profile for you. This is going to be a Dogmatika deck profile post Photon Hypernova. There is a lot of new cards coming out for this deck as well as other old decks, so I wanted to at least go over a couple of them this week. I'm going to have another one scheduled for tomorrow of a GISHKI deck that I think you guys will really enjoy. But for now, we're going to go over Dogmatika. But before we get into it, I finally figured out how to check the analytics of subscribers to unsubscribers for viewers. So if you see this video and you're watching it, please subscribe. Everyone hit 1,000 subscribers and I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to jump right into the deck profile, so hope you guys enjoyed. Okay guys, so here is my starting list for the Dogmatika deck post Photon Hypernova. I'm going to explain some cards because I know this looks a little weird probably, but I promise you this does make sense, and I have theories behind the reasoning for here. I did some theorizing with my brother, so we're going to go through the card by card, and then we'll get to the new cards. We're going to read through them, or maybe some things you might not be familiar with. So starting off, we have Ash Blossom. I'm playing Ash Blossom again because of Kashtira. It's actually very good against that deck, and it's not like it's super bad against tier elements. It's just that there was better options in a pure tier 0 format, but because the format is going to open up a little bit, you're going to need more generic cards again, so you're going to see deck building change in a variety of ways coming up. So yeah, we have 3 Ash Blossom, 2 of the Ashian. I'm not, don't judge me on the pronunciation of some of these cards, but this is actually the recursion for a pure Dogmatika deck, where if it's something is sent from, an extra deck card is sent from the graveyard, special summon it, add a Dogmatika card from deck to hand, or I'm sorry, from graveyard to hand. My god, I cannot talk today, but yeah, from a graveyard to hand, and then also if a Dogmatika you control is attacked, all your Dogmatikas gain 500, so it's the opposite of Fleur de Lis attack gain. Obviously, we have 3 copies of Ecclesia as like the best searcher. It can special summon itself going second. 3 copies of Fleur. This is another card that's good going second because you can interact with your opponent if you summon Ecclesia, and you can just immediately have an effect negation in your hand that could catch people off guard, and it's non-targeting. Also, it threatens battle phase very early, which is extremely nice. So I think going second, that this deck actually has a very good chance going second as well into a lot of boards. We do still play the 1 Maximus, so the thing with Maximus, obviously, is against tier element, it's not the best because they can send Kikalos to mill 5, but against literally every other deck, it is actually perfectly reasonable to send 2, and you get a lot of advantage out of it with how the extra deck is, obviously, if you can see it. You get a much advantage out of it. But even if you go against something like tier, you can actually bait them to use their effects so that you can activate something like triple tactics tasking or triple tactics talents. So you can go like, just for instance, for example's sake, if you go Maximus, they mill 5, they send Kikalos mill 5, they make a fusion monster, but then on the fusion that they summon, if you go something like Fleur de Lis, to negate their fusion monster, now they have activated an effect this turn and have a monster, so you can go triple tactics tasking now to be able to set either Nadir Servant or triple tactics talent, and then you can kind of snowball it from there. You can almost force these 2 cards to be live with this deck, which I thought was really interesting. So Maximus is definitely really good, gives you a lot of advantage, and again, it's not tier element or things that can abuse it. It's even a bit crazier just because of how much advantage you get off of it. 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Again, we are broadening hand traps again, going into a more of an open format. Veiling Kikalos is still really good, and Veiling on certain other cards in Kashtira. We're not positive what the correct card to interact with is yet. I believe it is Rise Heart, but I could be wrong. That is just my personal opinion currently. But again, it depends where we go with it. 2 copies of Fenrir in this deck because you can just special Fenrir search another one. It's free going second. Your deck also locks yourself out of the extra deck, so strong main deck monsters are definitely a way to go, and it's very important for that. You could also play a bigger Kashtira package in this deck if you want, but when I was doing that, it kind of turned more into a Kashtira deck rather than a Dogmatika deck, so I really wanted to minimalize cards like this because you need Dogmatika cards to be able to use the ritual monsters effects and whatnot. Then we have one of the older ritual monsters, which, if you're not familiar with this, does pretty much if your opponent activates anything, you can send a card from your extra to the graveyard to then look at their extra deck and send something to the graveyard. Being able to look is a huge advantage because you get to see what engines they're running. You never know if your opponent's playing a Zeus package or anything like that. That's just some random things you can just know from looking, but also going into the future formats, players are going to be playing more than 1 Kikalos now in tier element, for instance, so being able to rip something like the 1 of Kaleido Heart instead is still very relevant, knowing that you don't have to worry about that card anymore. So yeah, just like stuff like that, that's very, very important. Also, 500 attack is very relevant because you can send something like Herald of the Arclight with Nadir Servant to be able to search this and the ritual spell just to make it live immediately, so Nadir Servant being a 1-card ritual was pretty good. This is the first new card I get to go over, because there was actually no effect monsters, it is all rituals and spells. We have the Zoa of the Dogmatika. This is a new ritual that is huge, 4,000, 4,000. It cannot be ritual summoned except with Dogmatika card effect, and Dogmatika monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's extra deck cards, pretty much. During your main phase, you can make your opponent activate one of these effects, but the way this works is, so I'll just go over the effects first. Send one card from their hand or extra deck to the graveyard for every 2 cards in their extra deck, their choice. So they have 15 cards in their extra deck. For every 2, you send 1. So they are going to send 7 cards out of their extra deck most of the time, which is very good. That is about half their extra deck, so they can just eliminate it right there. Again, this is another card that could bait for stuff like triple tactics, tasking, and talents if they send anything that activates, which is totally awesome as well. The other effect is return all fusion synchros and link monsters they control to the extra deck. But the thing with this card is, if they do not have any fusion, synchro, exceeds, or link monsters, they cannot choose this effect because it doesn't do anything. So they are forced to activate this one to send half their extra deck to the graveyard. So this card is actually very good. It's also very hard to out for a lot of the decks because you need a specific card to out it. And yeah, this is like what you're going to be going for most of the time. 4,000, 4,000 is huge. Many things cannot out this, and being unaffected by extra deck cards is a very big deal. The point of this deck is be very interruptive. So what I mean by that is sending half the extra deck to the graveyard. Maximus can also send another 2 to the graveyard. Also, the spell can send 1 from extra deck to graveyard, and the other ritual can send from extra deck to the graveyard. So a lot of the times you're actually ripping roughly 10 cards to 11 cards for their extra deck to the graveyard on your turn 1. And then on your opponent's turn, depending on what you have, you might be able to rip more cards with this, but you're also going to resolve other cards as well. So you might be able to turn off an entire deck's engine in one shot just with this deck alone, so I thought that was kind of neat. So yeah, that's Zoa, and then we have the Ritual spell. For those of you who don't know, this is just a Dogmatika Ritual spell that is very straightforward, but you can use a extra deck card to Ritual summon. This is very strong, obviously, but unfortunately Zoa is level 12, and we can only use 1 extra deck card, so we have to use a big level 12 monster. For now, I'm just using this because it's 45, so you can send it with Endear Servant to search still. It's just not that relevant, but still. But in the set after Photon Hypernova, I believe there is a actual Dogmatika level 12 that does something in the graveyard, so that makes this a lot better. But for now, this is what we have to work with, so that is how you're summoning this Zoa. And yeah, that should be it. Yeah, you just can't special summon the extra deck, that's the thing, like I said. This is the other ritual spell. I'm only playing one of it just for recyclability, where you can ritual summon from the graveyard, but you also have to tribute from the hand or field to do it. You can't do the, what's it called? You can't do the extra deck send, so that's very relevant. There's an extra effect too with the other 2 ritual monsters, but we don't play both, so it's never going to come up. Then this is another new card that is coming out. This is the second one. This one is very, very good. This is another reason why I think this deck has a high chance going second, where when it's activated, you can add a Dogmatika Ritual monster or Ritual spell. That is very good on a continuous, because now you can go Ecclesia for this. For a Ritual card, you get a free card out of it, with this being the middleman. But if your opponent controls a monster, you can add a Dogmatika card for your deck to your hand as well. So, if going second, most likely your opponent is going to have a monster on the field, you can add 2 cards from your deck to your hand with this card. So that is extremely powerful and advantage-wise. Also, it sits here. And the sit here effect is if you control a Dogmatika Ritual monster, you can look at either player's extra deck and send a monster from it to the graveyard. So that includes your own extra deck as well. But you want to use this mostly on your opponent's extra deck because you can hit a lot of key cards out of there. So this deck, in a roundabout way, can actually hit a lot of very important things, such as in Kashtira, you can find a ways to hit 3 copies of Shangri-La out of your opponent's extra deck. This also is a good way to turn off your opponent's Pot of Prosperities, because you rip too many cards out of their extra deck where they can't banish 6, and then they don't want to banish the rest of their extra deck for Pot of Prosperity, because then they're pretty much out of extra deck cards. Talking so much. But yeah, so this card is extremely good for going second, and I really, really like it. This is probably one of my favorite cards for this deck that is coming out. Yeah, so again, and this deck is getting even more support in the next set after this one. So again, this is just something that's really cool to me, and I like ritual monsters. 3 copies in Endear Servant, because this card is back at 3, and it is still insane. So this is obviously the structure of the deck. I'm not going to go over it too much, but just as an option, it is important to know, you can still play the Shadal package in this deck if you wanted to Nadir Servant, send the App Cologne, get Schism, and then go for a win the play if you wanted to on your opponent's turn. I am not doing that right now, but if you want to, you can. It just loses very hard to Kashtira because they have inherent special summons that are not dark monsters and can just beat over the window like it's nothing. So just something to keep in mind. 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, because you don't really care about your extra deck because you're not going into it, you are just sending from it. And you also have the copy of Omega to shuffle stuff back if you do dump too many cards. 2 copies of Tasking and 2 copies of Talents. Again, you can almost force these cards to be live with how this deck functions, which is very cool. I was playing 3 and 2 before, but I kept drawing 2 copies of some of them, so I just cut it down to 2 and 2, and it's been working fine. Just a very, very good card too. Like, very, very strong cards. This is probably going to be one of the better cards out of next set, and the Chase card. 1 Dogmatika Punishment, just as a search and an interruption with the Dogmatika Ecclesia, and 3 copies of Imperm, again, generic hand trap, very good, plays around talents. I'm going to just talk about this card in the side deck. Like, these are just all generically good side deck cards going in the next format, in my opinion. Obviously, Bestial's for tier, but I actually completely forgot, after looking at the set, that we get another Bestial monster that I completely forgot about. And this one is very good, so it does the normal Bestial thing, quick effect, banish light or dark, if your opponent controls a monster, yada yada. But if your opponent special summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, and or Link monster, you contribute 1 other light or dark monster, then target one of those special summon monsters and banish it. This has a very real second effect, unlike Bestial Saronir, where if you were just playing this as an engine, Saronir doesn't do anything. So now you actually, every Bestial is very good that you are playing against Tier Limit. And the reason this is better is because if you have 2 Bestials, for instance, or if you have a Fleur-de-Lis that you summon on your opponent's turn, because you can do that, and you Bestial them with this, you can actually already have the second effect live because of having a white monster on the field. So this can interact with 2 of your opponent's cards. So now you can stop 1 Tier Element in the graveyard, then when they go into Kikalos, you can just banish the Kikalos with the Baldrake. Very, very good. Just something I wanted to go over that you should know about. Now, going on to the extra deck real quick. Like I said, we are playing this is a level 12. We are playing Despian. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but I'm going to go over it in a second. But its effect is to just pretty much take a extra deck from the graveyard, special summon it, or banish it, and it is big, and it can also burn. But the point is, it's big, and that it can take stuff out of the graveyard, and you can summon this, and I'm going to show you how in a little bit. It's with the last new card. 2 copies of Entist, because you can send it to the graveyard with like Maximus and stuff like that. So very good card. Garua is a free draw, as long as you just remember you cannot Prosperity and draw in the same turn. So just something to keep in mind. Prosperity might be cuttable because of Talents and Garua, but again, just up to you. I just like having the option if I don't. You're not always going to have Prosperity, so just something to keep in mind. And finally, the final dragon, that is the last new card out of the set, which takes Blazing Cartesia and 1 light or dark monster. You are obviously never going to fusion summon this, but we are going to go to the graveyard effect because that is what's relevant. So let me get to it. Okay, if a monster is special summoned by your opponent's activated monster effect, which is a lot, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard, so from the graveyard, special summon 1 Dogmatika monster, or from your deck 1 Despian monster from your extra deck. So what this can do is it can special summon any Dogmatika, which is 99% of the time going to be Ecclesia to search, or it can special summon a Despia from the extra deck, which is going to be your Despian Pro that thing. Point is, it's big and it's annoying to deal with. So just something that you can do as another option to send the graveyard with either Nadir Servant, Maximus. It's just stuff that you can send that gets value later. Those cards would be including this and the Pegasus, very, very good, that get value later. Same with the Titaniclads that we're playing 3 of course, because it's specials or searches, Fallen, or Dogmatikas, very strong. And again, we are playing the Heralds because Nadir Servant to be able to help search, or the Dogmatika Maximus. Herald's a very good card, obviously, because sent to the graveyard, add a ritual spell or ritual monster. Cypherian Ward Omega, this is if you just need the recyclability for stuff. If you want to get some stuff back, or if you use too many extra deck cards, you can get back in the extra deck. This can also interrupt your opponent's graveyard as well if you want to dump it, if they're setting something up. There's something to keep in mind. 2 copies of Wind Pegasus, because this sits in the graveyard and can be very annoying. When a card you control is destroyed, banish it, target a card you don't control, shuffle it into the deck. That is very annoying for some decks to deal with if they do not have an out to the graveyard. So if this just sits in there, it is very hard to push through your board. Yeah, it's a very strong card. And then finally, we are playing the Merologic Argonator. So again, field effect does not matter. If it's sent to the graveyard, target a face-up card in the field, negates effects. This can be used to negate a lot of floodgates, and it can negate a lot of other annoying cards that maybe you don't want to deal with. Going into like maybe a Tearlman Soliac, you can Nadir Servant send this to negate the Soliac for the turn so they can't get value off of it. Just some like random interactions that you can keep in mind. But yeah, that is the deck for now. Again, this is a very disruptive deck. It's not like a big combo deck. This is something that makes your opponent have to play awkward because you are constantly ripping cards out of their extra deck. And it's just something different that I wanted to show you guys, that you know, out of next set, it's not just Kashtira that you can build. I'm sure these aren't going to be like the craziest rarity or chase cards in the world. It's just something that is an option for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. And again, I'm going to be uploading another video tomorrow on a different deck. It's going to be GISHKI. That is also coming on Photon Hypernova. So again, hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Later.